So this is the sixth lesson from Unit 10, and at the top here it says factor by grouping, but actually we had a shorter lesson today because of an exam schedule, so actually lesson 6 is going to be perfect squares. Now we actually started off by doing a review for the warm-up on what we did in the previous lesson, which was slide and glide. So what we do with slide and glide is we slide the 4 to the end and multiply, so 3 times 4 is 12. And then we just factor as normal, so two numbers that times to make 12 and add to make 8, 2 and 6. Both signs are the same, they're both positive, and then we fill that in. Now after we've done the multiplying by 4, we also have to remember to do the opposite of that to get back to the original question, which is to divide by 4. A lot of people then move into 4 straight to the front as the glide, but you have to simplify this first. So 2 quarters is 1/2, and 6 quarters is 3/2. Once you have simplified, now you can glide the numbers back to the start. And ideally you should check your answer to make sure you do get the correct answer. So 4x squared plus 6x plus 2x gives us 8x plus 3, so we definitely have the right answer for that one. Now the second one's also slide and glide, so times by 6. So we've got 12, two numbers at times make 12, but this time subtract, and as there's no number here, we need to remember that we're trying to get 1. So it's going to be 4 and 3. The larger of the two numbers is going to be negative, from -4. And we saw that from the Teach Me How to Factor video that's also available on YouTube. And once we've done that, we then got to remember to divide by the original number, which is 6. Go ahead and simplify, so 4 over 6 is the same as 2/3. 3/6 is 1/2, because they both divide by 3. And then we can glide the number to the start at the end to get our answer there. And once again, you should check just to make sure that works. Now for the last question, a lot of people use slide and glide again, with this not starting with just x squared. So they said x squared minus 36. And they remember difference of squares. Or they said two numbers at times make 36, subtract to make 0, because there is 0x there. And then they divided by 4. 6 over 4 is 3 over 2, and then glide the 2 to the start. So 2x plus 3, 2x minus 3. Now that's correct, but you don't need slide and glide for this question. Both of these are perfect squares already. 4x squared is 2x times 2x, 9 is 3 times 3. So once you've spotted that, then you can actually say signs are going to be different. So one is going to be 2x minus 3, the other one's going to be 2x plus 3, and it's the same answer there. So when we've got our subtract here, both of these two terms, they should both be perfect squares, so you should just be able to do the square root of each term, make one negative and one positive, and then we should be able to come up with the right answer. Now, slide and glide doesn't always work, and sometimes it can make things more complicated. First of all, you should always look for a GCF on all your questions, otherwise slide and glide won't work, as you saw last lesson. But sometimes you do it, and it probably makes the question more difficult than it needs to be. So keep an eye out for perfect squares, and let me give you an example to show what I mean by this. So this is supposed to be 2025. So if I can see, this starts with 25x squared, so I know I need to move the 25 to the end. But if I do that, two numbers that times to make 2025, add to make 90, you can see that's a very difficult problem. So there must be something simpler for this question, and there is. The thing to notice is the first and the last term are both perfect squares. So similar to what we did on that last question in the example of the warm-up, is we say what multiplied together gives us that, so 5x. What multiplies together to give us 81? 9. And then we just take this sign here and plug it in the middle. So our answer is just going to be this plus this times by the same thing, this plus this. Or, as it's the same thing multiplied together, we could just say it's the same thing squared. So if I was doing this in one step, what I would say is, what times by itself gives me 25x squared? 5x. What multiplied by itself gives me 81? 9. Look at this sign here to give me plus, and then make sure I put it as a square. So that's why we call this perfect squares. Something multiplied by itself gives us that answer. Now we should check with FOIL to make sure this does work though. 9 times 5 is 45. 5 times 9 is 45. If you add those together, you do indeed get 90. But it's something you should check when you're doing these questions. So second question, same thing. If we do slide and glide, the numbers just look far too big. So let's look at what we've actually got here for our first and last terms. And once again, these are both perfect squares. So 49 is 7, so I'm going to make it 7x. 16 is 4 times 4. Look at the sign for the middle part of this, negative, and then make it a squared. And that should work perfectly. But in theory, that's what you're actually looking at. and then write down your answer. But as you can see, if you know what you're looking for, you can actually write the answer down almost straight away. Oops. Now you should check your answer as well using FOIL just to make sure. So negative 28x, negative 28x does indeed give you negative 56x. One more try getting that line across there. There we go. Alright, now for our last example, if we multiply this across, 18 times 200 is also going to be far too big of a number for us to want to work with. So we'll have a look to see if we got perfect squares. And we do not this time. So the other thing we should always look for in every question when we factor is there a greatest common factor? And for this one, certainly 2 is a common factor for this. So 2 times 9x squared gives me 18x squared, 2 times 60 gives me 120, and 2 times 100 gives me 200. But notice now these are both perfect squares as well, the 9 and the 100. So square root for 9x squared is going to be 3x, square root for 100 is going to be 10. Negative for both, so 3x minus 10, 3x minus 10. And as it's the same thing multiplied together, once again we could put square. Now if you want to check your answer for this one to see if it's right, then you have to do 3x times 3x is 9x, times 2 is 18x squared. 3x times 10 is 30, times 2 is 60. Negative 10 times 3 is 30, times 2 is 60, and the 60 and the 60 do give you 120. 10 times 10 is 100, times 2 gives you your 200. So you can still check your answer to make sure that you have it right. Now we then looked at the following worksheet, and I'm going to pause the video at this point so you can have a try on the first 2 questions.